And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the latest episode of the Sling'N podcast. I'm TJ.
And I'm Frank.
That's right. Kent is not here. Sadly, guys, Kent was not able to make it. He did get tied up with some adult stuff and some work stuff, right? Adulting sucks, but he's getting to spend some quality time with the family while he runs around and does some extra stuff for work. So it's all good, and we wish him the best. He did say that if the show does last long enough and he makes it back in time, he'll try to jump in towards the end, but we'll see what happens. We're not going to rush it. So instead, we've brought you slightly moderately more attractive version of Kent in the form of a Frank.
Well, I got more hair. We'll say I have more hair.
All right, fucker. Let's not get personal. Jesus, making me all self-conscious. I'm gonna have to go throw my hat on. Anyway, Frank, what's up with you, buddy? How things been going? Right, we've been having you on the show a little bit more. We really appreciate having you on the show. Showing that brotherhood and that mutual love and respect to our boys of the Apache crew. But what's been new with you, man? What's up in your world?
Work's been just wide open. Been fortunate to be able to spend a little bit more time with family. Hence why you guys are being able to see me a little bit more. So I'm not slaving away at a 9 to 5 as much anymore. So I'm able to have a little bit more freedom and spend some more time with the family, spend some more time on here with you guys, spend a little bit more time on the range. So all good things.
Outstanding, man. Yeah, it's always good, dude. It's, by the way, I don't know if this has happened to you yet, but my wife has reminded me that Christmas is 6 Mondays away.
Yep. Yeah. So this past week, my wife we just finished up, Halloween and all that fun stuff. She's like, all right, let's start getting out all the Christmas decorations. I was like, no, not until after Thanksgiving. We got another holiday in between there, but I think
give the turkey his day.
Yeah, she's all amped up on Christmas stuff, and I'm like, no, let's wait, let's back it up a little bit. So I'm probably gonna lose that fight, but we'll see how long I can hold out.
Sometimes it's worth the battle,
right?
It's worth the argument. Because you know what, guys, and by the way, it is election day for most of the country, right? Yep. There's so much other shit that we've been fighting over at every turn. I would love the opportunity just to argue with my wife over whether or not we should break out Christmas decorations rather than give the turkey his day, right?
Yeah, there's such thing as a healthy amount of arguing, not like I'm going to kill you, but just like playful banter to go back and forth. But not to say the other's not there, but
yeah, it's like, fine, honey, I'll hold the ladder though. You get to put the lights on the roof.
Yeah. If I said that my pregnant wife, I would be like hung out and drawn and
quartered. Okay, yeah, that's fair. Yeah, you're kind of screwed on that one.
You see her out there in like my bucket van, like hanging lights with her belly hanging over off the side, little.
Oh, well, see, you got the cherry picker.
Yeah, it's safe, sure. So what if it's 900 years old? But yeah, you'll be fine.
Hey, that means it was built to last.
Yeah, in the great state of Tennessee.
Indeed. Yeah, we know how to build some shit around here. Let's see. So, I by the way, folks, for those of you that are playing the home game, right? Ammunition prices are starting to come back down. Just some things that have been up with me, right? So, aside from getting ready for a tournament, the tournament's this Saturday, by the way. So getting ready for that. One more training day before I go into a recovery cycle to get ready for Saturday. But after I get through this tournament, getting into the holiday season, I have a personal goal to be back at the range more often. Gotten a bit rusty over the last several months. So about time to get out there and knock the rust off as I come out and do more training. So I went ahead and I ordered some ammunition, ordered about 1,500 rounds from Freedom Munitions. No plug here. This is went and bought with my own money. It was funny though, because it is shipped through UPS and it weighed 46 pounds. You get the tracking updates like every day, like the first week went by. Obviously most of that ammo is made to order or whatever have you. Comes through, finally gets ready for departure. And I keep seeing like the delivery date get pushed back every day for like a couple of days. And look, they made the delivery, right? No harm, no foul. It was like a total of 10 days, which is what's expected for free shipping, 7 to 10 business days. But I kept seeing it getting pushed back. And I'm like, you look at the shipping weight and you're like, I can see what's happening. They're at the UPS like warehouse, and they go to pick up that box like, nope, we'll do it tomorrow.
Stay there. Now,
we'll do it tomorrow.
In the past, I've ordered just a slew of ammo, thousands of rounds, and I'm filled with joy when I have 3 of the 4 boxes or something like that are shipped together, and you got that one box that just is like it's anticipated to be delivered the same time as all the rest of these boxes, but it's still in BFE Maine or something like that. So it's like, I'll see that box, maybe never. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, it was funny to me, and Frank and I were talking just before we went live. So while I was at Apache with Kent doing the defensive pistol metrics class, Frank let me shoot one of his guns, and he had this real nice, like, cool recoil system in his Glock 48. And I'm like, okay, that actually really does shoot very well. I think we talked about it on a couple episodes ago.
Yeah.
I'm like, I want to try this thing out. It's made in Greece, like, as in Greek, like across the ocean, right? This thing got here before the ammo did, and I ordered it after the ammo. So, yeah, it was just kind of comical. I just having that scenario play through my head with the UPS guy. Just go, nope, fuck it, it can wait. That dude. What's interesting though is like the dude, like, so when it got delivered, I would expect to see like a dolly or something, right? Because, like, look, I get it. It's a 46-pound box. You don't want to just like lug that bitch around. Like, I get it.
And it's small and kind of awkward, so.
Yeah. It wasn't a huge box at all, but like, still, it's heavy.
Right.
Like, use your tools, man. We evolved from apes for a reason. We know how to use tools. Guy parked, like, he stayed in my cul-de-sac, and I've got a relatively long driveway by comparison to most suburban areas, right? Maybe 60 yards total distance from the edge of the cul-de-sac to my doorstep. He parked in the cul-de-sac and carried that bitch, left it on my doorstep, and like, but you could tell like he was walking away all pissed off. I'm just like, bro, like, don't be mad. Like,
all of our typical delivery drivers, Amazon, UPS, whatever, they all know to come around to the back of the house and drop stuff off now because, my driveway just cuts all the way through the property. And the ones that don't, I have a very long front yard. So they'll park like out at the road in the front of the yard, and then they're bringing stuff in all the way up to and sitting on the front porch and walking all the way back. You're like, man, that they are whooped. Like they're carrying these big old boxes like this.
But see, my postal worker, like, so my mail person, they have their shit together. Like, you can crap on government employees all day long, but these good old boys that work at the U.S. Postal Service here in bumfuck nowhere, Tennessee, like, these guys and gals, they got it down. Like, whenever Christmas time comes around, because I try to do, Frank, I'm sure you're the same way. Black Friday, give me Cyber Monday. I'm gonna knock that shit out all in one day. Done. 20 minutes at the computer, add everything in your wish list to the cart, call it good, and wait for it to get delivered. So I have like several boxes. I've got a wife and 2 kids that I'm buying presents for and stuff. So like, there's a lot of stuff that comes in the mail around the holidays for us, as I'm sure others are like. They will pull up like right in front of my front door. Like, they'll drive into my grass, park at the front door, honk the horn, and be like, "Come on, dude, come help.
Come get your stuff."
Yeah. Like, yeah, buddy, I'm coming, man. Just, it's all good, right?
People did that in my uppity neighborhood. They'd be up in arms. They'd be trying to get that poor guy fired or whatever. I mean, I'd be all for it, but that's, unfortunately that wouldn't happen.
Yeah, we live in what I like to call rural suburbia.
Right.
So I went from a house that had 20 acres, middle of nowhere, actually kind of set up like the Apache compound, right?
Yeah.
Off the beaten path, right? No real neighbors for a good distance. It was nice and quiet. We moved out here into it, and it's a subdivision, right? There's multiple houses around here. I've got neighbors now, but every house is on like a 1 acre plot. So all the houses are spread apart pretty well, and everyone kind of minds their own business, right? The kids do their thing, some of the kids play together or whatever have you. But it's a nice, decent neighborhood. But so we don't get the uppity people, which is good. I appreciate that because I've lived in a homeowners association, and I will go back to Iraq and Afghanistan before I live in another HOA.
Yeah, I
Screw
dodged a bullet with
that.
that, kind of. Well, that's another story for another time.
Yeah,
we'll,
yeah.
we'll get into a little pat about that sometime. But HOAs are fun.
Yes. Yeah. But tonight we are here to talk about rifles, right? Actually,
Right.
it's quite apt, Frank, that you're here since you trolled the piss out of me when we were talking during the zeroing optics episode about rifles. So it comes down to really just kind of the cost versus expectation, right?
Yeah.
And the results may surprise you, but Frank, I'm kind of curious, right? You know, you train with firearms, obviously, not just
Like on
short
occasion.
guns, but on occasion, but not just short guns, long guns too. If I were to just hand you a rifle, right?
Okay.
What are some of the expectations that you would have of that rifle? Right,
That,
regardless of platform, but let's at least set some ground rules here.
Yeah.
Semi-automatic, right? Semi-automatic America rifle, or even let's even go Soviet, right? AK versus AR platform. But what are some expectations that you would have from that platform?
that it's safe, right? It has,
That's a good one.
it'll function properly, right? Function as expected. And when I press the trigger, it'll go bang for semi-auto once and only once. If I release on the trigger after pressing it, it will not go bang. That is my expectation. Aside from that, it really starts getting into, I want that platform, that rifle to hit an acceptable target at an acceptable distance. The determining factor of that is going to be, it's going to depend on the type of platform, the type of gun, the age of the gun, what its use is, how beat up it is or shot out it is or not. All these things play into, the platform, play into the particular gun. I mean, there's a lot to consider, and I like chunking into 3 categories. Durability, reliability, precision, performance, and cost, right? So out of those 3 things, there needs to be a balance to create that expectation, right? So I was talking to a really, really squared away rifle guy, the guy who really helps challenge me and makes me think about things. And I was talking with him, before the podcast. This is, earlier today, and it's the distance, the amount of money, the amount of time, the amount of parts, and the amount of expectation to go from, we'll say, a 3 MOA gun down to a 2 MOA gun is nominal, right? It's a couple $100. But to go from that 2 MOA gun down to a 1 MOA gun, it's twice the amount of cost as it would have taken you to get from that 3 MOA gun to that 2 MOA gun. And then even more so to get from that 1 MOA down to sub MOA. So it's incremental at that point. Like, you're going to be spending so much more money. You're going to be putting so much more time. Your expectations are going to be so much greater because you felt like you spent so much money to try and chase that sub MOA, grouping at your desired distance. But how long you're going to be able to maintain that sub MOA grouping is going to change, right? That's where you may have that performance piece, but the reliability or the longevity of that tool to be able to perform at that level is going to change. So you have to manage that expectation. You have to figure out, what is the goal of this tool, right? What do I want to do with this tool, this gun, this particular platform? And how much money do I want to spend? So managing that expectation, and then knowing, okay, even though that this gun is a sub MOA gun at, we'll say 1,000 yards or something crazy, what is my ability as a shooter to be able to actually perform at that level with that particular tool, right? So it's all, I've seen plenty of guys, I've met plenty of guys who will go out and say, yep, this gun right here, it can shoot, hold, sub MOA, quarter MOA, whatever, at 1,000 yards. So cool. That's impressive. Can you, as a shooter, hold that at 1,000 yards? And that far out, you're talking, 12 inches or something like that, 8 inches. I mean, that's an insane group at that distance. But I mean, that's the balance, though. I mean, that's what we're talking about today. That the cost of the gun, the parts that we're putting inside the gun, regardless of the platform, versus what your expectation of, how it's going to perform, or what your expectation of what it's going to cost, what you need to do to put into that gun to make it run.
Right.
That's my
I think my biggest sticking point from an expectation aspect is the cost or the price being correlated to reliability. Reliability is a big thing for me, right? Glock is the litmus paper to which all things are compared from a reliability perspective, right?
According to the internet, yeah.
Yeah, according to the internet. And I don't think that we're too far off on that understanding, right? I can get down with that. I can argue that Glock is a reliable gun.
Yeah, I agree.
I could argue that an AK-47 is a reliable gun, right?
I agree.
Will it go bang when I press the trigger? However, the expectation of failure should always be present.
Right.
So I used to shoot three gun frequently. It actually pains me when I think about how much money I spent on 3-gun. Oh God. Anyway, it was good training, good experience. Really loved it. Great people. But there's a certain point in your life, folks, when you realize if you're not making money at something, maybe you should stop spending money on that thing. So it just kind of is what it is. Or at least getting tangible, practical application of skills out of the process. And there's only so much that 3-gun skills will translate into. With that being said, though, I have got several rifles in my gun safe. I've got a, at the time, brand new off the shelf. It was about a $1,500 AR. It's a SIG M400 specifically, and I've tricked that thing out a little bit. Right, it's got a nice compensator. Still got the factory barrel, free float handguard, better trigger, optic, all the kit and caboodle to make it run and get the accuracy out of it that I wanted. So let's just say I've got about $2,300 into the gun total, right? Okay. Different bolt carrier group, charging handle, all that, everything, recoil system, all that shit, right? So including the gun plus everything I did to it, let's be conservative, just call it $2,000. I've also got a rifle or a handgun that I've built for $750. And I have seen and shot rifles that go all the way up to $3,000 to $5,000. A la enter your kinetic, what is it? Not Kinetic Development Group, Cobalt Kinetics, right? These really high-end AR-15s that run beautifully. Don't get me wrong. Recoil impulse is like butter, like great shooting guns. I have seen the exact same failures across every AR platform I have picked up.
Absolutely.
Right.
And
so
I think you're going to see those same failures across, like, not just ARs. I mean, we're picking on ARs, so that's probably what you and I are most familiar with, but across really any shooting platform, any long gun, right. What's going to be one of the first things that's going to start to wear out on you? The barrel, right? You shoot so many thousands of rounds through it, you're going to start to have issues. Before you get that, it's really up to maintenance. If you're not maintaining the gun properly, you're going to have premature failures. I would go as far as saying, so yesterday I was on the range with a kid named Thomas. I absolutely love training with Thomas. We shot very little yesterday. He brought a box of parts, and it was for an AR platform rifle that he got stuck on. He was wanting to put this thing together. This was his project he wanted to do. He wanted to shoot it. So he brought it and said, hey, I got stuck. What do I do? So we spent the next hour and a half sitting together, going through different parts of the gun and, figuring out, this is how this goes together. This is why it goes together. This is what you need to touch. This is what you need to clean. These are things to think about, stuff like that. So we spent the next hour and a half putting this thing together, and it was enjoyable from the aspect of, this is his gun and this is what he knows, and this is his introduction, right, to this platform. So when he picks up the gun and he shoots it for the very first time, he's exhilarated, right? He's like, oh, this is great. This feels phenomenal. This is, this is mine. This is, and again, brand new gun, first rounds ever shot through it. When I picked up the exact same gun, I go, all right, I'm thinking, okay, here's a burr on this cheap parts kit, this lower parts kit or whatever that we just installed. There's a burr here. We need to clean this up a little bit. This impulse is a little harsh. Maybe we need to up this, get a heavier buffer. So I'm thinking about all these things that, we need to do to this gun to smooth it out a little bit, to clean it up a little bit. But it's preferential, right? So for me, because I have, a little bit more training because I have more time behind the gun, I know what I'm looking for and what feels good to me. And for him, he doesn't know yet. So he doesn't have that experience. He doesn't know what he's looking for. He doesn't know what he's feeling yet. So because it's an all new experience, it's great. It feels phenomenal. Though, because somebody who has maybe just a little bit more experience, we're like, this is a little rough. This is a little different. I don't like this. This is not my preference. So I prefer to buy something I prefer to build my own stuff, put my own stuff together, especially on an AR type platform. So there's a couple of things that you can absolutely get away with that you are absolutely essential for the base of the gun, right? Especially on an AR platform, you have to have a squared away upper, as far as just upper receiver. You'd have a square away lower receiver, but everything else that you put on it, it's going to be preference. Like, what do you want the gun to do? How much money, how much budget do you have to spend on the gun? And how reliable do you want that gun to be? So the correlation between how reliable it's going to be is directly correlated to the cost of it, right? So you're going to spend more money, you're going to get better parts in the hope that it's going to perform better. But it doesn't always work that way. It's not always that linear. Far too many guys I know will go out and they'll want to build their own very first gun. So they go out and they think they're buying all the best stuff, but they don't know about tolerance stacking, right? They don't know that this manufacturer over here designs their part just a little differently than this manufacturer over here. And maybe they're both a little on the large side, right? So there will be 50 thou out of tolerance for something, right? For we'll say for like the actual action, the firing control group of the gun. And because of that, now you potentially can have a dangerous trigger, right? You potentially can have something that will run away on you, or potentially the spacing between the fitment between the upper receiver and the lower receiver isn't good, right? So there'll be a little bit of play, a little bit of walk in between there. Now there are things that you can do to adjust that, but if you're just going out and trying to spend all the money and do all the best things, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have a quality firearm. It's going to have something that technically might work, but so there's a dance, right? So there's a dance between, you can go out and spend all the money in the world and you think you have something awesome and it's not, because it may not be reliable, or you can spend less money and tailor the gun to what your needs are, and you're going to have something that shoots comparably. It's just, and on top of that, you get to learn the parts. You really get to learn, your platform. You get to learn at what intervals do I need to be thinking about changing things up. An upper receiver, you get what, maybe 5,000 or 10,000 rounds or so, about the same time, 10,000 rounds or so on an upper receiver before you start getting some heavy wear. It's about the same time as what, a barrel, right? So that's going to be something.
Barrel. Well, depending on the barrel, right? And this is where we can start. I think we can start diving into the cost. The cost versus expectation, right? On a cheaper barrel, let's say you went and got like a $99 barrel from Brownells or wherever. They do make them
or something.
Right? They do make them. Right. I've got one in my 300 blackout build that I did as an SBR. I just wanted to go through the process of learning to build something. I figured I might as well make it fun. Yeah. Right. So I built a 300 blackout registered, fully functional SBR. Paid $99 for the barrel. Shoots fine. But do I expect to get a good amount of life out of that barrel? Hell no.
No.
Now, if I'm just shooting subsonics, that's one thing. But let's stick to the 5.56 cartridge, right? So with a 5.56 cartridge, if you were to spend, $100 to $150 on a barrel, which they do make them, they're still available. Actually, they're getting even cheaper because of the oversaturation of the market right now.
Right.
But I would see five to 10,000. I would say I'd push it at 10,000 rounds before you started seeing failures on the barrel, or started noticing your groups opening up or something like that.
Also, it would still shoot, but it would be harder and harder to hold that expectation of that 2 or 3 MOA or whatever it is for that.
Yeah, barrel. You're wearing down, or you're getting past the point of precision.
Right.
Well, you're seeing a degradation of the precision of the platform as a mechanism. Right. And let's be clear, right? For those that might not have seen these episodes before, I think it's worth establishing some definitions here. Precision is the capability of the platform itself, right? So when we say a gun is sub MOA, presumably that means that all of the parts and pieces, the sum of all of its parts, are precise enough to maintain a sub-inch group at 100 yards. Right, that is what the rifle or that platform is capable of doing. That is precision. Accuracy is the combination of the precision of the platform, the interface of the shooter, environmental considerations, and the ammo, all combined to complete the package. Right. So accuracy involves all things that are interfacing with that firearm or affecting that firearm in the shot process, in the flight of the bullet. The precision is just for the capability of the system itself, right?
Yeah, and the accuracy involves, the human component of that. What can the shooter do to, what changes, what stuff does the shooter induce on the actual platform itself to make that that accuracy, that group open up. So, again, same guy that I train with from time to time. We can shoot the exact same gun. We can shoot it what appears to be exact same way. I'm a 2 to 3 MOA shooter all day long, and this dude's an MOA to sub MOA. It has everything to do with the gun. The gun potentially is a sub MOA gun, and he's able to maintain that by not putting anything else into the gun. He's just a phenomenal shot. But I digress.
No, it's a reasonable expectation, right? But out of let's just say a middle of the road barrel. Actually, I would even argue that for a lot of your precision, your premium barrels, right? Let's say you want to go drop $750 on just the barrel itself, all the way down to I don't know, let's say $350 to $400, right? I would expect 30,000 rounds out of that barrel. 30,000 rounds out of that barrel before you really started noticing the precision wearing down, right? There's a gray area between, at least with regard to the consistency, because what do we need to determine that there's something wrong with the platform, right? The consistency has to be there with the accuracy part, right? Or the accuracy, right? The human interaction, right? Are you consistently by yourself shooting sub-MOA groups at 100 yards, and then without changing anything or having any question around your skill level or your ammunition quality, start seeing those groups open up, right? Which is one of the biggest signs of, there's a couple of big signs when a barrel starts to wear down. One, the groups open up, and 2, keyholing, which could also be tied to ammunition, but generally speaking, when you start seeing bullets doing things that they didn't otherwise do, all things being equal, it's probably a sign that your barrel life is starting to get shot out.
And there's other things to go along with. The 30,000 rounds for me it may be a little excessive, but the throat erosion happens pretty quick. Like I said, the porthole erosion. So the piece where like all those hot gases are really starting to break down the inside of that barrel. The piece that that I think really goes underappreciated is, the heat cycles, right? The mechanical limits of the actual barrel, the mechanical limits of the actual parts of the gun.
The heat, you're talking about the heating and the cooling of the barrel itself because of the consistent gunfire.
Right. So, you're going to wear down something more quickly at the higher temperatures, the more sustained heat that it has than if you were to take 2 or 3 shots, let it cool down. 2 or 3 shots, let it cool down. Right. That's the same reason why, different parts are going to wear out differently, depending if you're running a gun that's suppressed or not. So if I have a 100% dedicated suppressed firearm, the barrel may not wear out nearly as quickly as the we'll say if it's semi-auto, as my gas tube, right? As the
your operating system itself. The operating system itself is what gets put under the most stress for that.
Yeah, because we're funneling all these hot gases instead of it just being puked out the front of the gun. Now it's starting to get pushed back inside the action of the firearm. It's starting to wear down all these parts that wouldn't normally experience so much pressure or wouldn't normally experience so much the corrosive environments. Especially talk about steel ammo, stuff like that. Our good old buddy Mike Kinsey said that if it can't shoot steel, it doesn't deserve brass. And so, we want it to go pew, and if it can't, perform at and eat, even the nasty stuff, why am I going to put my expensive stuff through it? But anyway, that's.
No, see, I would argue that's a reasonable expectation of reliability, right?
Depends on.
It should be. Yeah, I would argue that. We're talking about barrel life here, at least at first. I will maintain that 30,000 rounds is a reasonable expectation for a quality barrel. Let's be clear, a quality barrel. If I remember correctly, the military swaps their barrels out at 50,000 rounds.
Okay.
And military's built like military M4s are built by the lowest bidder, right? But that being said, that doesn't mean that you won't see failures with other parts, right? 30,000 rounds. Let's be clear. You're right, Frank. That's 100. That is a huge request of a single part of that body, right?
Oh, yeah.
That is the rifle. But that's the barrel alone. I'm not saying that you're not going to start to see failure like throat erosion, head space, and timing, right? The interface between the bolt carrier group or the bolt face itself and the chamber of the rifle, right? Yep. You could certainly see that coming down. But as far as like the overall life of the barrel, like the rifling itself, its concentricity, right, straightness, all that other stuff, as long as it's maintained properly, it's actually going to last you quite a long time. But again, but your bolt face, right? That thing's going to wear down. You'll probably break a tooth on that cam.
Yeah, you'll shear off
than anything else.
You'll have these like little 45-degree angle grooves cut in the back of it to where it's
it helps it rotate in place.
Yeah, well, it helps it it'll unlock a little bit faster the more that wears down, but it doesn't have as clean as tight as a lock. So
right,
yeah, there's all different things to look at. To obsess over. The big thing that again that I see a lot of people will completely miss is, like I said, they'll dump all this money into it. They think they have this absolutely reliable gun, but they put no regular maintenance into it. So you see a lot of these failures that you see are premature, and they're premature that in a way that could have been prevent. I say premature because it could have been preventable, right? Mm-hmm. So actually taking your bolt carrier group out, disassembling the bolt carrier group, cleaning it, going through and making sure that the top of the gas tube's not just absolutely filled with carbon. So it's nice and open, nice and clean, nice, not completely eroded away yet. Copper. I've seen copper all over the insides of, especially like on air platform guns, especially if you shoot suppressed. You'll get that blue haze on everything, and that can clog up a lot of stuff. The seals that are on the actual bolt carrier group, they'll just get
the gas rings.
Yeah, gas rings. They'll get absolutely just fused together and stuck. I mean, you see all kinds of stuff that a little bit of grease and 2 minutes of some TLC could really, back it off and really help out with making sure that this platform's living as long as it can live.
Yeah, I want to address something too, because you bring up a good point, or at least a good segue, right? Have I gone a long time without cleaning my rifles? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Do I expect failures or issues with repeatability or reliability when I do that? Absolutely. There are some people on the internet, former operators, professional trainers, people that get a lot of trigger time behind a rifle, that you will hear say at some point, I have never cleaned this rifle. There is some credence to the fact that the AR-15 platform was to some extent designed to be somewhat self-cleaning. That implies that you shoot it enough, right? Those guys that are able to make that claim, they keep it lubricated and they keep it shooting so that the self-cleaning functionality, and again, this is not a claim, this is an expectation, that just the way that a gas-operated rifle functions, it is meant to blow most of that shit out of it, right? Matter of fact, my suppressor is the same way. I can't take apart my suppressor, at least not that one, that I put on my AR platforms and stuff. If I want to clean it out, I put it on a bigger rifle that's a higher pressure, and it blows all the shit out of it. Man. Yeah. I put it on my 308, or I'll put it on a 300 Win Mag or something, and it'll blow all that crap out of the front of it. And it's self-cleaning. AR-15 rifle is no different. Now, would I stake my life on it? Hell no. But if you go shoot the daylights out of your gun and you stick it in your safe for 6 months and never touch it again, all that lubricant, carbon, copper fouling, all that shit is gonna start to gum up everything.
Oh yeah.
Right. You just like everything else, guys, take your guns apart, clean them. If for nothing else, get familiar with it and use it as an opportunity to inspect for other critical failures.
Right.
Maybe you're not going to swab the bore, right? Maybe you're not going to run a bore brush down the damn thing. And okay, fine. We can debate on that all day long. But taking out the bolt carrier group, fully disassembling the bolt carrier group. You guys in the chat have mentioned ultrasonic cleaners. I have one, went and got one from Harbor Freight. Works perfect for cleaning a bolt carrier group or small rifle parts. Works beautifully. Take it apart, scrub the dog shit out of it, and examine it. Look for cracks, right? That bolt is going to get just as hot, if not hotter, than the barrel in some cases, right? Because it's making that constant contact. I would argue that it's a part of the barrel if you really want to think about it, right? But it's maintaining contact with the chamber. It's holding onto the casing when it's getting fired. It's where the bulk of the pressure is getting hit. Everything past the breech of the gun is having pressure dispelled from it. It's not absorbing it, right? So bolt carrier groups, absolutely essential. Also, the amount of small parts, right? Frank, you went with your buddy. Thomas was his name, right? Yep. I'm sure by going through that exercise, you realize that the absolute smallest part on that gun, like a gas ring or a cotter pin or a detent, is going to completely render that gun non-functional.
Absolutely. Yep.
Right? Or what I like to call the fuck of the rifle. Yeah, that's what I like to call the fuck of the rifle. Like, because when you're putting it together and you hear that ping and it goes around you're like, fuck. Yeah. So it's
we sat down and we laid all the parts out in front of us, right? So this was again bare bones, bare lower, well, it was assembled upper, but just bare lower. And we laid all the parts out in front of us, and I was going through and I was like, all right, what do you think this is? Just going piece by piece by piece by piece, just kind of showing how everything interconnected. And I'm looking at all these parts and I go, buddy, we're missing something. And he goes, what? No, everything's here. I'm like, no, man, we're missing a pretty important part. The hammer was completely gone out of his kit. Like I watched him open the kit and dump it out in front of me. So it just got missed, right? Quality control. So we're sitting there like, ooh, this is gonna suck. What am I gonna do? Am I gonna take it out of my gun? No, I don't want to take it out of my gun. I like my stuff right now. What am I gonna do? We're at the range. I'm gonna call Tim. So I call my buddy Tim and I go, hey buddy, I need a part. So because of the platform, the parts are interchangeable, especially if you get something that's mil spec. So I stole a hammer from him. We dropped it in his gun. We put everything together. He helped put everything together, and we went and shot the hell out of that thing. But that's something else that I'd like to touch base on. Mil spec. We hear that all the time. what's the difference between these prosumer? What's the difference between mil spec? What's the difference between consumer? Right. So, I hear a lot of the, oh well, mil spec this, mil spec that. Do y'all know what mil spec is?
Good enough.
It's good enough. It's good enough and sold to the lowest bidder, right? Generally speaking.
Yeah, I'd have to confer with Cam, but no, let's define that, right? So mil spec. What are the military's expectations of a service rifle?
Right.
If I remember correctly, and I hope I'm not misquoting him here. If I remember correctly, this Cam knows infinitely more about this shit than any of us do, but I believe it's 4 MOA is the expectation.
Okay.
So it must maintain a 4-inch group at 100 yards. 4-inch group at 100 yards. To any other person, like any consumer, if you went and bought a $1,500 rifle off the rack at your local sporting goods store or whatever, or your local gun shop,
4 MOA,
and it was hitting 4 MOA groups at 100 yards, you'd return that bitch in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I can say that that's their expectation. That is the definition of military grade, right? Or rack grade service rifles. I can tell you that handily they shoot better, much better than 4 MOA. Now, are they shooting sub MOA? Oh, hell no.
When we start getting into like parts specifically that are mil spec, it means that they have a certain tolerance that they're holding to. They're making it so that they can go to the machine to a certain aspect. So if you have a gun that's generally mil spec, then you can go to any other mil spec gun, grab the same part, stick it in the gun, ideally, and it would still work.
Yes.
On the other side of that, you have consumer. Those consumer or commercial parts, they're especially on like buffer tubes, lower receivers, things like that. They're going to be a little bit bigger, so they won't work necessarily with every platform, especially on like the air platform, and they're not going to last nearly as long, right? So generally they're designed around cheap parts and comfort or looks, right? They want to make it so
I would say the consumer grade. So I think that mil spec needs a little bit more definition, right? Because there seems to be a deviation in like mil spec is not a universal term. Kind of like Nashville hot here in Tennessee. You can go to 18 different restaurants and order their Nashville hot. You would expect it all to be the same level of heat and the same flavor.
It's all different.
That ain't the fucking case.
Right.
But a mil spec, like let's use the buffer tube as an easy example, right? A mil spec buffer tube is designed to withstand certain amounts of force. Like they're looking for a point of failure, right? Now, are there mechanisms and dimensions more specifically? Are there dimensions that qualify a mil spec tube? Absolutely. If you go measure any, you break out your calipers on any, military issued M4 platform, that buffer tube is going to be within a certain threshold of a dimension, right?
And that's for mil spec fit.
That's right. The quality, though, and I will give this to the military with mil spec stuff. They don't, again, like we've already established that their performance is a second thing, right? If you're holding a 4 MOA group, if that's your expectation, performance, like accuracy or precision, is not top of your concern. It's probably a secondary or tertiary priority, but it's not the priority. The priority is the reliability and the durability of that part. Right? I would argue that a Mossberg 590 is a mil-spec shotgun because it was designed for the U.S. Navy to have a thicker diameter or thicker wall on the barrel when it gets smacked into bulkheads on a ship or whatever have you. It's meant to be more rugged. But convert that over to consumer grade mil-spec, right, which has become a marketing buzzword now because people are sadly naive enough to fall for that marketing ploy. It will have those dimensions, and you could probably go measure that consumer grade mil spec buffer tube with other buffer tubes in the military, and it'll probably come out to be about the same within that same threshold of deviation or standard deviation. But the quality won't be there.
Right. And that's what
the ruggedness won't be there.
My phone's blowing up, so I got people texting me, and my good friend I was talking about that I do some rifle shooting with was, made for mil spec materials doesn't mean it's mil spec fit, and he's absolutely correct.
Perfect encapsulation to the point I'm making.
And that's really what it is. You'll see something that's made from this. Sure, maybe the classification of that particular aluminum is the same, but it's machined with subpar standards.
That's right.
So
that's right. So when we look at real quick though, because there are people that may want to build their own rifle, right? Do pay attention if you like buffer tubes are a big thing, right? If you get a mil spec or a commercial buffer tube, and if you buy them from a reputable manufacturer, they will be labeled as such.
Right.
Aero Precision, all those different guys, right? Magpul, right? They're another good one. They will specifically state whether or not that stock is made for or machined for a mil spec or a commercial buffer tube.
Right.
Right. And let's be clear, that's just referring to the dimensions of the buffer tube, so it'll fit properly.
And there are other,
just keep that in mind. Buyer beware.
And there are other parts, that make up the entire system that it all falls on the same category. So anyway, so going back to it, so got, like I said, the mil spec, we got the commercial, and then I like to call it the prosumer. Right? You got that area which they've taken. They're still abiding by those mil spec, general tolerances, but they're tightening. Right. They're making them close to those nominal dimensions, and they're making the product better. They're using better materials. They're using materials that can withstand the stresses a little bit better. They've designed them in such a way to handle a particular issue. For example, right now we're testing. This is neat, and he'll text me here in a minute with the actual name, but there's this neat product to where it replaces the cam pin, right, that's inside your bolt carrier group with a roller. So during normal operations, if you have an upper that has thousands of rounds through it, you'll actually see where the cam pin will actually start to run a groove that's on the inside of your upper. And there's this product that's out that replaces that cam pin with this roller, right? So it's a rolling pin now instead of it like a locking pin, to where it's a lot less. It imparts a lot less stress on the actual upper.
I had one of those. So when I had it, and I no longer have this rifle, but my head down firearms, the 6.5 Grendel that I had.
Yeah.
And only reason I got rid of it, honestly, I just wasn't shooting it enough. I had to custom reload everything. It was more the cartridge. It had nothing to do with the platform. It was a phenomenal gun. But they had one of those fancy. I noticed, like the cam pin or the
like a roller
instead of, it was a roller. Phenomenal idea. I will be mindful though, because it does have like a bearing type function to it. Yeah. Like you can spin it. You can hold the bolt carrier in your hand. You can spin this thing, and you can watch the little outer ring from the bearing. Or I guess that would be the bearing race.
Yeah,
I think, if I remember my engineering terminology correctly, it will spin, but it is not completely sealed, so it is prone to getting gunked up. You need to clean it. It is a pain in the ass to remove, but I will say this: even if it gets gummed up, Frank, the point that you made. So if we have two linear surfaces, right? So this is the inside. Just imagine this finger is the inside wall of your upper receiver. The interface of a traditional cam pin is similarly a flat surface, and we've got this kind of a rubbing action, right? Then if we impart a circle, the surface contact against that wall is much smaller, right? Because we're dealing with a specific degree of contact from that circular pattern on that cam pin. The bearing race action just helps alleviate some of that stress. So I think it's a phenomenal design. I think it's a great innovation. I think, to speak to expectations, we can expect not necessarily enhanced performance, but an increase in the longevity or the lifespan of the upper receiver. We're reducing the wear and tear.
And that's the expectation, right? So I really like this particular upper. I like how it fits. I like the fitment it has with the lower receiver. It's the more expensive part. So I'm going to place a cheaper part that will help mitigate the damage to this more expensive part, and we'll see. We're testing it right now. It's the Patriot Ordnance Firearms USA Rolling Cam. That's the particular product, but we're testing it. We're gonna put hella rounds through, thousands of rounds. We're gonna see where it fails, see what works out, see not. So it's in this period of testing right now. So it's not something I'm going to be running in any of my stuff, not for duty use, but it has depending on the testing that we do, it has some merit. But there are other things,
absolutely,
other products out there that trigger groups are really popular. How many drop-in trigger groups are there out in the world? I mean, there are a ton of them, far too many for us to name. And are they better than just the mil-spec trigger group? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on your use, right? Depends on what you're wanting to do with the gun, or what you can do with a gun. Like that. That starts to get back more into the prep, personal preference, personal training, what the shooter can do, versus what the platform can do, what the rifle can do.
Yeah, aside from sinking good money into, and let me be clear, when I say sinking good money, let me rephrase. I mean sinking smart money.
Yeah.
Right. You can go get, you can go build a rifle. Right. I would reasonably expect a duty grade, something that I would be willing to stake my life on, to end up costing me between $1,000 and $1,500.
I'd say that's fair.
Right. Again, $1,000 to $1,500. I'm not shooting down space shuttles here. I need to stop a two-legged predator or even a four-legged predator at distance and do it reliably with reliable reasonable expectations of precision and accuracy. That doesn't mean that that's $500 in the trigger and $500 in the barrel.
No.
Right? That could be $60 in the trigger, $300 in the barrel, right? Maybe another $200 in a bulk carrier group, right? Anything else that you do above that. So let's just keep numbers around, $1,000. Anything that I would invest into that platform after it had reached that point of reliability for duty use, again, I'm going to use that term, right? Anything after that is, you're using the term personal preference. I like to use the term as shooter enablement.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. It will a good trigger make a bad shooter better? No. But a good trigger will make a good shooter shoot better. Right?
Yep.
It's not going to take you from zero to hero, but it'll take you from superstar to hero. Right? It'll help you close that distance. If I had to put a percentage on it, expect a 10 to 15% improvement in your performance as an accurate package, right?
Yeah,
and that's all those things.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, there's a law of diminishing returns and all that too.
Right. Yeah, and then something else that I really caution, because we see it with guys running handguns too. They want the super cool, go fast. This is what's happening on Instagram right now type stuff. But at some point, some of getting that trigger that's too light. Right, getting that trigger that doesn't meet the needs of what you're going to be using the platform for can be dangerous. I see guys who are on their duty rigs will, duty gear will carry, triggers that are ounces. And
yep.
As far as me and I'm concerned, that is a no-go. That does not work for me. I consider that unsafe.
Yeah, well, we've heard Jedi use the term jailbait splits, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything in the
That's
teens,
how you're accomplishing
right?
that. Yeah. And
right. There are guns that are scary.
Yeah.
There are guns that are scary. Like in with respect to the fact that, and this kind of falls into that category of law of diminishing returns, what you might be gaining in performance, you're giving up in control.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Because you're expecting the platform to bridge the gap between your capability and everything else. Right.
So
So
before we get into
you're
training, 'cause that's where this is going.
right.
The other piece, as far as the actual platform that I think is super important, is you don't have to go out and buy this, spend $1,500 or whatever it is all at once, right? So you can go out and you can buy, a Colt or something like that, right? Just a good quality, base, base level firearm, base level, gun. And so you're spending what, 800 somewhere in there today, and then you
Mhm.
can incrementally grow that into something that works really well for you. You can incrementally
Oh,
grow that,
absolutely.
get those shooter, enhancements, those shooter advantages. So how do you do that? So you start off with that base level gun, you learn that base gun, and then you slowly add things that work to your advantage, and you do that through training. Um,
Yep.
I think, aside from, guys will go out and they'll blow, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 on this beautiful, phenomenally working, just, work of art that will run like a scolded dog if need be. But there's no training behind that. So
Right.
the capabilities of the platform are far out exceed, the level that the shooters at. Um, that you're at that level of diminishing returns. You're not going to get the performance out of that particular platform because you haven't spent enough time in ammo and enough time in actual trigger time behind that gun. Learning what the platform can do, and that honestly is what holds most people back. It's the training aspect. It's or it's the gun whore who has 15 different rifles and they rotate in between different rifles every time they're out on the range, or gun every time they're on the range. They're not going to learn one gun. They're not going to learn their platform to
Right.
excellence. They're going to learn all of them okay, instead of learning one or two phenomenally well.
Yeah. So when my brother and I were growing up, we had regular Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis. The rule of the household from my dad was, I will go buy you a new video game when you can sit down and show me that you can beat the current game you have from start to finish without using any cheat codes. That was the expectation.
I
The
couldn't do
same
that.
expectation. Huh?
So I have to use cheat codes. Like I wouldn't be able to beat it.
Well, at some point you use cheat codes just because they're fun. But the reality of the situation is that, like, that translates into so many different things, especially firearms, right?
Yep.
And now look, I'm not telling you not to go out and pick yourself, like, especially if you're not wanting to go whole hog and build one from scratch or assemble one from scratch. Um, but consider that principle, right? Do you understand that firearm enough? Do you have the skill set enough to beat that game from start to finish without using any cheat codes? Once you get to a point where you feel like you have beaten, now let's be clear that you're not like going to storm Bowser's castle and save Princess Peach with a rifle, right? It's completely different story. But the reality is, you will get to a point where you're like, you know what? I can outrun this thing. I am better than this rifle. It's time to upgrade to have this rifle keep up with me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the
And
way it goes. And the downside is that takes a lot of work to get to that point.
oh, it really does. And so something I had learned early on, and I didn't even know it. It kind of happened by accident. So I had this Glock, right? I was Gen 317, factory sights, factory trigger, like just. But that's what I had, so that's what I ran. I was new into training, so I didn't really know any better. I didn't care to Google this stuff. Like, it was just, this is what I had. This is what I'm going to use. I'm not going to put much money into it. So it actually took somebody else, another instructor at the time, to grabbing my gun and shooting my gun going, oh my goodness, Frank, this trigger is really bad. Like, it was obnoxiously bad, especially for a Gen 317, that it was holding me back. So it was this heavy, monster of a trigger that was holding me back from gaining these progressively quicker quicker, splits. So now, as an instructor, as somebody who helps teach other people, coach other people now, like I know that so there is an aspect of the particular farm is holding somebody back. Fitment's a big piece of that. Does it fit? Is it too big? Is it not, not right for that particular shooter? And then after the fitment, it's, it's the capability of the particular platform. Is the trigger too heavy? Is it something that we can mitigate a little bit, not to compensate for the shooter's lack of skill? Let's make sure that's perfectly clear. Like the shooter's skill level needs to be to a particular point before we can start blaming the gun. But
I think there's a difference between an enhancement and an improvement.
Yeah.
Right. Your truck might be running like shit. Doesn't mean you need a whole new engine, but maybe you need an oil change.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
So yeah, it's what I'm curious though with your journey is you've been going through training and ultimately becoming an instructor and everything like that. What are some of the things like, so I guess my question to you would be, someone not within the military, and let's be clear, you don't learn a whole lot about proficiency to a high level of performance when you're in the military, but you do shoot a lot of ammunition. You get a lot of reps, right? But from a new shooter, Joe Schmo civilian coming into, goes and buys his $1,500 rifle, starts taking training. At what point do you think that shooter can expect to really start to take stock of what his platform is capable of, what he or she is capable of, right? Is there a round count with that? Is there an amount of hours in training? Like what's kind of your goal? Like what are you looking for somebody? Like if I came to you and said, hey, I've got X number of classes, right? What kind of expectation would you be having from me as from a performance base, right? What is that number of classes?
So that's going to, my typical go-to answer is it depends, right? It depends on the individual shooter, on an individual shooter to individual student.
Spoken like a true IT guy, by the way.
So so let's just say take that brand new Joe Schmo off the street, or that kid who's wanting to learn and really go from there. What they need to do is they need to first learn how to, they need to learn their platform, right? They need to learn what the platform can do. The only way that they can accomplish to do that, thank you, friends on the phone who are blowing me up, because they're absolutely right. The only way that they can learn how to do that is by learning, how to, the capabilities of the gun, like what the gun can actually do. And by the only way that you can learn what the capabilities of what the gun can do is by learning how to zero the gun properly. So what can, the only way you can discover what that particular firearm can do is by going through a true zeroing process and understanding what that is. I'm not talking about, just going out my cousin's field and shooting at 100 yards. Like, I mean, like truly understanding what a zero is, what is a far zero, what is your max ord, what is a near zero, like really being able to break that down. And then being able to clearly dictate, okay, I'm choosing this particular zero because, right? Not just because, oh yeah, it's 100 yards, or I read on the internet that a 50 is the same thing as 200. Like, no, you need to be able to very clearly dictate like what a zero is, why you're going to be using a zero, and what that zero is going to do for you on your particular gun. So if I can go to you, TJ, and let's say that you're brand new, and you can describe to me everything I just said. So what is a zero, and what zero you're going to pick, and why are you going to pick it? And then I say, cool, here's your gun, right? Here's your ammo. Go zero this gun, and then you confidently can go out there and zero your gun without any aid, any help. I would say that you have that you're there, right? You understand the fundamentals. You understand what it means for all the fundamentals of marksmanship to be able to adequately and clearly in a controlled manner be able to zero that particular firearm to a particular point at a particular distance. I mean, that's worth its weight in gold. Everything else, all those other skills are going to come. But if you can't zero a gun, then you don't meet the minimum requirements to be able to control and to understand how the platform actually works.
That's just an interesting metric. I honestly hadn't even thought about that. Maybe it's because I'm going to use this term loosely, but maybe because I think so menially of the aspects of zeroing a firearm.
A lot of us do. Yeah.
You don't realize exactly. I mean, it's a core fundamental to your point, but there's a lot to be said about me giving you, like, maybe I even give you, here's the rifle, here's your, like, here you're shopping, right? Here's your gun box, here's your box for your mount, your scope, or your optic, or whatever you're going to put on it, right? You're like, okay, and then you immediately walk out to the range, and you're able to put all that shit together properly without any coaching, oversight, supervision, or input, and reliably sight that rifle in exactly to where you want it to be, and knowing where you want it to be. There's actually a lot to be said with that level of skill. And it's funny because it doesn't seem like, you see, we focus so much on performance, right? Oh, well, he's got like 16 splits between shots. He makes a semi sound like a full auto and all this other stuff. He's super fast, super quick. He can transition from this to that. We're looking at all these other different performance metrics.
If you can't hit what you're aiming, why does it matter?
Yeah, if you can't even make okay, you're going to hit where I tell you to hit, but I can't even tell you where to hit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And again, I have a phenomenal teacher. I'm going to call him my guru. Somebody who I bounce ideas off of, and we go back and forth quite a bit on. But one of the very, very first things that we do when we handle our rifles, take them out of the cars, go to do any kind of training session, is we verify that zero. It doesn't mean you have to stretch out to, I prefer 200-yard zero on my particular duty, my particular self-defense rifle. That doesn't mean I have to go all the way out to 200 yards to verify that. I can stand at 5 yards and do the exact same thing because I know what it's supposed to look like, right? Or in the butt side of my gun, I can pull up my little cheat sheet and go, okay, at 10 yards, it's supposed to be this. Yes. Is it this? Good enough. Sean, when it comes second nature, you tend to forget that it took effort to get there the first time. And he's right. It's at some point, we don't think about how hard it is or the journey it took for us to get to a particular place. That's one of the cool things. That's one of the, I know I've already talked about him a couple of times. That's one of the cool things about, yesterday for me with Thomas, I got to with Thomas. So Thomas came out as a youth, not wanting to do anything with a gun. Long story short, he got a little Henry 22, a little lever action 22, learned how to shoot it, absolutely loved it. Like, I was present when he got his first gun. Like, I was there. And then here we are, fast forward a few years. Now I'm helping him assemble his very own modern sporting rifle. Like, it's such a cool, such a cool journey, right? To be able to see where he was to where he is today. And he's getting better and better. But what's even cooler for me is not, seeing this journey, but seeing how excited he gets and how much he just eats up the things that we take for granted, just like what Sean said, right? So the process of zeroing, the process of the math that goes beyond, trajectories and everything like that, and how to calculate, point of aim versus point of impact, and being able to do that properly at distance. I have firsthand seen this kid come for like a 1 hour session and do nothing but math the entire session and not touch a gun. And he eats it up. Absolutely loves it. I don't know very many other adults that would want to do that. Like, they want to come and they want to press the bang switch and make noise.
Yeah.
But
I just want to go fast.
Yeah. But there's such a level of finesse and there's such a level of aptitude to be able to go, sure, the guy who just wants to press the bang switch, he has a certain level of understanding, but this kid, man, he understands it. Like, he really, like, in depth, can just spit it out and then hammer on it. And it's because he has a phenomenal teacher, not me. He has another instructor who really hammers on him and really does a good work of being able to go, this is the whys. These are the little intricacies that to most people don't matter, but they really do. Like they really do matter. Our community, our podcast community, it's our cam, right? It's somebody who has just such an in-depth knowledge that they're willing to share with others that most other people aren't ever going to be able to relate to. I mean, that's something really special. Like I really enjoy learning under. I really enjoy learning from people like that. That can, that can teach me about those things that I don't know, those things that I take for granted. Yeah, it's cool. But anyway, so zeroing.
It's a beautiful thing. It really is. I'm curious though, right? So with your own personal journey, right? Just kind of as we start moving to wrap up, right? What was one expectation that you might have had? Speaking of rifles, right? What is one expectation that you had of your rifles that was either proven to be true or untrue that was probably the most significant to you with your understanding of the platform?
That would probably be that rifles are easier, right? So the expectation was that, a rifle platform in general is easier to master. And I found that while it may be more expedient to take somebody who is, brand new to a rifle and get them to where they're hitting a target fairly quickly, right, and fitting a target fairly accurately, what I've found, especially over the past, 2 or 3 years, is that there's just so much more than meets the eye when it comes to a rifle that people just take for granted. The importance of building a position, the importance of building a stance, how your body is aligned to the actual, firearm is so important. Being able to understand just something as simple as that zeroing process, right? I know we kind of went down a rabbit hole with it, but there's so many little intricacies, and there's so many different ways of looking at it, so many different theories behind it that you really need to read books. I mean, legitimate, books on zeroing theory, legitimate books on ballistics to have a fundamental understanding of how all of this works together. And if you don't do that stuff, if you don't do any kind of reading, if you don't do any kind of exploration in that, and you just go, yeah, I know how to zero, just because I can put the crosshairs in the center of a dot at 100 yards, but there's no rhyme or reason to why, you're missing out on a big, huge learning opportunity, and you're missing out of core understanding of what that platform can do and what we predominantly train in a self-defensive arena, right? We want to be able to, or not just self-defense, but maybe even hunting also, right? So taking down game, doing something for sport. I'm not talking about just going and plinking, but being able to, if you're hunting, being able to stop that, that food source or claim that food source like humanely and quickly. If you're doing for self-defense, being able to stop that threat, at those intermediary distances, successfully, without, the concern of placing rounds where you didn't want them to go. Right. So we don't want them going into the next door neighbor's house. We want to go in that threat. We want to stop that threat, not, the neighbor's kid down the street. So, I mean, these are all, if you don't have that grounded knowledge in that zero and what that gun can do and what you can do behind that gun, then you're not going to be able to successfully be able to handle those scenarios without it being luck. Right. So that's, like I said, that whole journey of, I think that, oh yeah, rifles are easier. I've always heard the rifles easier. Why are they easier? Oh, well, you got 3 points of contact, whatever. You hear that old trope, but then after you get into it and you go, oh, I was wrong about this. Sure, rifles are easier, but like there's a little caveat there. Yeah, sure, they're easier to an extent, unless you really want to understand it, then it's way more complex. You know,
it's kind of the old I've heard the adage, like skiing versus snowboarding. Skiing is easier. Fuck it, I can't even remember which one was which, but one was easier to learn than it was to master. The other was harder to learn but easier to master. Right?
Yeah.
Rifles are easier to learn.
I agree.
I would argue that there's a lot of performance aspects of that platform that do make them easier to learn at close distance. They are more challenging to master.
Yeah.
Right?
Would agree.
A pistol, and conversely, a handgun is, for some, it can be hard to learn because there's a lot of deviation there, right? Given the distances, right, I would say that, you would probably be expected to master a pistol craft faster or in a lower round count than you would a rifle.
Yeah.
If you were pushing, and let me be clear, if you're pushing it to the fullest ability of its or to the fullest capability that it is, or the fullest ability that it is capable of, right? Mastering a rifle does not mean being able to hit a target at 25 yards, right? The capability of that rifle, like I can engage with my 16-inch gun, I can engage a human-sized target at 500 yards. I've done it consistently, right? I can't say that I've mastered that platform out to that distance. I can hit that far, but I'm far from calling myself a master, right?
Well,
but it was super easy to learn, and employing at close distance, it's like a cakewalk.
Right.
Right? It's like driving a Formula One race car to school. You'll get there really quick.
Right.
Right? Whereas a handgun is probably like a millennial learning to drive a stick shift.
I mean, it boils back down to what's the use, right? So with a hand, like at what point is good enough, right? So with a handgun, you're going to get to a certain point where you feel like, okay, I feel like, God forbid I ever have to, God forbid, the circumstance ever, I ever had to come across the circumstances. But I feel like in this particular scenario, in this in my mind's eye, if I were, if something were to happen, I feel like with reasonable doubt, I can, use my handgun in self-defense. A lot of people, especially with rifles, I would say that that's acceptable. That's that point to where I'm going to maintain my level of training, but I'm not going to be incrementally really grinding and really pushing to try and get those smaller and smaller gaps. Which is, I'm going to spend time on things that I'm less good at. So on a rifle, for example, it's very easy to get very quick on, okay, well, this is how this works. I can teach it. My daughter, she's 6. She knows the bolt action anyway. She knows how to work the safe. She knows how to work the bolt. So she knows all these things where she can run a bolt action, no problem. But if you put a handgun in her hand, everything changes, right? It's way different. So if I can teach her, how to very quickly get on a rifle, and she understands that, and she understands the safety behind that, and she understands why it's working and how it's working. It's much harder to do those parallels between a rifle to a pistol, while similar, right? The difference between a rifle and pistol is what? I'm trying to get in the camera. You're going from this to this, right? It's practically the same thing.
Yeah.
But and same thing with sighting, equal height, equal light, all that fun stuff. But it's just so much easier to get behind a rifle. You have your focal plane is just so much longer. You can sight things up just so much easier. So it feels a little bit more natural than a handgun does.
Right.
So, but at some point with a handgun, again, the distances are much shorter. You don't have to worry about you don't have to worry nearly as much than you do with a rifle, with over penetration, things like that. There's a lot more science because we're dealing with distances so much greater, so much farther than what you're typically going to be doing with a handgun. So yeah, I mean, all about that rifle life.
Oh
Especially,
yeah.
the more I learn, the more that I train with competent shooters, the more, I get invigorated with, okay, there is a place in modern society. There is a place for the American rifleman to have and understand and appreciate, what a rifle can do for you, especially a modern sporting rifle. Mike Kinsey, man. If for everyone that can hear my voice, go and take one of his courses, his Tac Rifle 2. He will very eloquently and concisely tell you what it means to be an American rifleman. I wish I could mimic him. I don't have the same vocabulary to be able to go through and do that, but that is an absolute, worth your time. Every chance I get, I go back and, listen to him and talk with him and, understand like the history that it means to be an American rifleman and why it's important for us in modern society to be able to follow suit and why we need to be able to do the same. And then, there's other instructors that I'll go through that are very, very headsy, right? So they're very, very, very intelligent. And they may even come off as being, too, demanding of a student to learn a particular aspect of a rifle. But after you get in their headspace a little bit and after you learn, wow, there's just so much more to this than I even thought.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you start to grow and where you really start to learn and you have a better appreciation for, what the platform, what the rifle can actually do. And I haven't taken Kent's class yet, his rifle class yet. I'm looking forward to doing that. Hopefully, sometime soon next year or something like that. But I'm sure if it's anything like, his defensive pistol metrics, I'm sure it's going to be a hoot, something to really enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I am sensing a spring or so, because I know better than to visit Ohio in the dead of winter.
Right.
I am sensing a field trip in the near future, probably next spring or summer, where we all just go crash on the gun set crew and go take the tactical rifle class.
Been there, done that. It is a lot of fun. Like literally showed up.
Five out of 5 stars would recommend. Then that means we'll do it. That means we'll go do
absolutely.
it again, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And I will have to take a look at the schedule. I know they've come to Apache a few times, or a couple of times anyway, but I don't think they're coming and teaching Tac Rifle this coming year. But yeah, an Ohio trip is definitely in order. We'll go see Sean and we'll go. We'll bring the war wagon. We'll do some pseudonym, some fake names and stuff. It'll be good. Good times.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're looking at getting a camper. Going to be doing some more traveling and I work from home. The kids are homeschooled, right? We can afford to travel and get away for a week or two here and there. If if Papa Bear gets some gun classes in the process, then the more the better, right?
Yeah.
So outstanding, Frank. Well, dude, I appreciate you filling in for Kent.
Pleasure.
It doesn't feel like the same without him, though, does it?
I know. It feels just cold.
It's because we don't have anybody to fuck with.
See, that's what it is.
That's what's missing. That's what it is. 100%. I think that's what it is. Anyway, Frank, what you got going on, man? Tell the folks what they can expect, what's coming down the Apache pipeline, and any closing comments, brother.
So we're actually starting to wind down the rest of the year. So our fall, our winter time, we really start to slow down as far as classes and such. Not to say that we don't have some. We have some workshops, some awesome stuff coming up. Have some North Carolina concealed carry here in next few weekends. Check us out, ApacheNC.com. All of our classes are on there. Hit us up on Eventbrite, Instagram, Apache LLC, Apache Solutions LLC. Have all the cool content that our media managers throwing out there. Joel Trey, Redbeard III. He's doing some really awesome work as far as making us look awesome and designing some cool stuff and whatnot. So check us out there. Reach out. Hashtag Apache Frank on Instagram. Shoot me a message, shoot me a DM, shoot me a comment, whatever it may be. We'll see. We can't get together and come train a little bit and get together and shoot some. All fun stuff.
Yeah, well, you heard it here first, folks. All you single men, feel free to slide into Frank's DMs.
No, that's gonna haunt me.
Yeah, oh yeah, you open it, you open the gate, buddy. But Frank, really appreciate you, brother. Love you to death.
Yeah, man.
Fun fact for those that weren't paying attention, like I got to go out to Apache for the first time like a couple of weeks ago. That's all the years that we've been on this podcast together. That's the first time Frank and I actually got to meet in person. And it was an absolute pleasure to get to meet you in person, man. I love you guys to death. Y'all are all just amazing people, and I'm glad to have you in my circle.
Likewise.
With that, folks, of course, greenmountaindefense.com/training. Get out there, check out the calendar for all of the upcoming classes and hosted courses that Kent has coming to the Green Mountain Defense Range. Of course, you're going to buy gun stuff anyway. You might as well buy it from us. Get us a little bit of support for the channel that we try to bring to you for free. Doesn't cost you any extra, but it supports us in the long run. greenmountaindefense.com/affiliate-links. Of course, we do have a Teespring store. Please go visit. Right now, we are still running and pushing Cam's ass-kicking contest invitational shirt. Cam is doing very well. I plan on having an update for that here very soon. Appreciate the amount of support that we've gotten for our dear friend Cam in his recovery following his motorcycle accident for him and his girlfriend. Absolute tragedy, but they are handling it about as good as, I would argue, probably better than any one of us could, which really speaks to their character and the spirit and the size of the heart that man has, despite the incredibly inappropriate humor that we all love so dearly. With that being said, folks, right, if you're going to carry a gun, you should carry medical. And even if you don't carry a gun, damn it, you should carry medical.
That's right.
DarkAngelMedical.com. Code BB15, that's Bravo 15, will get you 15% off at checkout. We get nothing back from that, but we do appreciate showing Kerry Davis some love out there. So if you could let him know that the Sling'N Led podcast sent you in your order notes, we would greatly appreciate it. And get out there and get some training with him, guys. He doesn't just sell this stuff. He does offer classes. So get out there and get some training done. Actually looking at getting some training for my son on the medical side before he's allowed to start babysitting. Right. So before we're going to allow him to sit with his kid sister, right. They're both getting old enough now, but at the same time, I want to make sure that if, she runs and falls down the stairs or whatever have you, as kids do, I want to know that Big Brother's going to be there and be just as capable as Daddy is to take care of her. Right. And himself. So it's important life skills to have, guys. You're probably going to come across a car accident far more than you're going to need to draw your gun.
That's right.
So just take that into perspective and get that training. But that's all the time we have for this week. One last final announcement. I did forget to mention this. The show is moving to a new date and a new time. Rather than Tuesdays at 9 p.m. Central or 9 p.m. Eastern, rather, we will be moving to Friday nights. Time to be determined, but it'll probably be around the same hour block, 8 Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. But we are deciding to move to Friday. We really want to maximize the involvement from our audience, really make ourselves more available to you guys. And we feel that would be an awesome time frame for us to bring this content to you. So stay tuned for more. Follow us on Instagram so you can see those updates and those posts when we are going to broadcast. And we look forward to seeing you in the live chat. But until then, take care of each other. God bless you all. Get out and shoot.
See everybody.